I'd like to use this short time that I was given to situate the human-to-human teaching and learning in some context. Because as we know, everything taken out of its context loses its meaning. And the worst thing that could happen to us is not to lose a job, but to lose the meaning and the purpose. Now, things have been changing rather fast lately. The technology that only a few years ago was a source of empowerment in education now seems to be a threat to our existence. But technological progress alone is not enough to undermine an institution as old as the classroom. So to understand what is happening, we have to look wider. We have to look at culture. And something changed in our culture. Something changed the nature of our interactions and relations. And it wasn't the arrival of AI in 2023 or late 22. Jonathan Haidt, in his latest book called The Anxious Generation, points out to the rise of the social media and the proliferation of smartphones at around 2010 as a potential turning point. These two developments changed the way we interact with one another. Our interactions became disembodied, asynchronous, one-to-many in contrast to one-to-one or one-to-few, and with a very low bar of entry and exit. And this trend overlaps with another powerful trend that has been brewing for many years, and that is solitude. Solitude has been on the rise for many decades. Some people say it dates back to the emergence of metropolis and the suburbs. The trend has been on the rise for many years, but it picked up exactly around early 2010s, and then it was supercharged by the COVID-19 pandemic. Loneliness, a very acute form of solitude, is expected to become a pandemic itself by 2030. In France, where I'm currently living, 25% of people admit feeling lonely. These are not only the elderly people traditionally exposed to some kind of isolation, but there's a rapidly growing number of young people. In the UK and in Japan, the governments appointed ministers for loneliness in their cabinets to deal with the problem. In the United States, a whole new branch of the economy emerged. It's called the cuddling industry. It's an industry of paid platonic touch staffed with an army of professional cutlists. There are countless more examples depicting how serious the situation is becoming. And in this context, many people look to the AI as a potential solution, which is not a bad idea after all, because we know that chatbots are becoming better and better conversation partners by the day. Even Mollick, an expert on AI from the United States, writes in his latest book called Co-Intelligence that AI may indeed make loneliness less of an issue, but he notices that while solving the problem of loneliness, AI will not solve another social problem, which is isolation. AI may further push people into isolation by making them to choose to interact with AIs rather than human beings. So, this isolation is at the heart of our modern culture. It is particularly brutal because it is hermetic. It isolates people from one another and from themselves. Because people these days are constantly busy consuming some sort of an online content. I think this isolation from oneself is particularly painful because people no longer want to spend time with themselves. The extreme example of that is known to the Japanese as hikikomori. The hikikomori are people who spend most of their time in their rooms, not leaving, consuming online content, afraid of the external world and afraid of themselves. But there is more to isolation than just personal suffering. People who don't talk to each other, people who don't meet other people, detach themselves from reality. And they are more likely to believe in all sorts of conspiracy theories. Hannah Arendt, in her Origins of Totalitarianism, wrote that loneliness is the common ground for terror. Loneliness draws us to the worst possible conclusions. I am alone becomes everybody is against me. And I don't know that person becomes that person is a threat to me. So as you can see, there are even political consequences of the modern isolation. But what is this isolation doing to people from our perspective? From the perspective of language teachers. It is simply robbing people of language. Yes. In a world where an average person consumes the equivalent of 300 pages of text daily, people are being deprived of language. This is a paradox no smaller than growing lonely, surrounded by ever bigger crowds. But language is more than just a tool for communication. Leibniz said that we are windowless monads, and the only tool we've got to show others what's inside of us, who we are, is language. Language is a space where we constitute and realize ourselves. And it doesn't happen in isolation. We cannot develop our individuality somewhere in seclusion and then, as if, test it in the world of human relations. And neither can we develop our individuality while communicating with those who are inferior to us, like animals or chatbots. Because all we do in this type of communication is to solicit consent and seek cooperation for our own benefit. It is only by entering the world of risk, of conflict, of responsibility, of human to human relationships that we can acquire the self-certainty and to become a person among persons. And for that reason, what is being taken away from us together with language is the power to become ourselves. For this reason, the classroom will never become obsolete. Its intrinsic value is simply too high. We need others to find out who we are. And this is a higher order problem in education, one to which the technology may just have opened the door. The tech is at the same time closing the door to what we got used to in the past. Even Mollick, to quote him once more, wrote that AI will destroy things in education before it improves it. I'm observing with amazement the progress AI is making in dismantling linguistic barriers. And I think that very soon, AI may strip the ELT of its E, leaving just LT, language teaching. And for this reason, we have to reimagine the classroom in the new context. In the context of skyrocketing solitude and isolation and all its consequences. It will entail a different approach. It will entail a radical shift from language as a tool for communication to language as a space where we constitute and realize ourselves. It will entail a different approach to how we advertise our services. It will entail more training and more education on behalf of the teachers, as they will need new skills. But the services that we are going to offer are going to be a new, higher margin services. In the world where linguistic barriers may disappear, the need to get together and spend time in language will remain. Because, as Charles Taylor puts it, humans are language animals, and we are and we remain the teachers of language. Thank you.